Welcome to Who Knows, It's Just Life, the podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. Thank you for fitting me into the day-to-day. On today's episode, we're going to talk about race, sports, and work again. And I'm not sorry that we're doing it again. It just keeps coming up. We just finished the Super Bowl, the halftime show. Got to talk about Brian Flores' case. I mean, I just got to go there. But first, let me give some updates real quick. We've been seeing a lot about the Russia and Ukraine dispute. And I remember hearing about this, some years ago. It had bubbled up back then. Bubbling up again now. It seems to be more imminent and more threatening that there will be conflict out there. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in that and kind of better understand that. And I don't know, that just doesn't seem like a good situation, but we'll see how that turns out. Also, on a personal note, my uncle is in Africa right now. This uncle is my dad's brother, and he has traveled the world. He's lived basically around the world throughout his life. And he recently was in Europe for about, 6 months or so. And now he's in Africa for the first time. Actually, Africa, I want to say it's probably the last continent he made it to, but obviously it's going to be hella rewarding for him to be there. He was in Kemet or Egypt first and foremost, and then I spoke to him when he was actually he was south of Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. He spent a lot of time in Ethiopia, and it was just really great to talk to him. He's also going to be hitting up Nairobi, Kenya in a few days, I think. So he and I talked. It's really cool to hear his perspective traveling. I guess, there's the COVID layer. There's World Cup soccer qualifiers happening now as well. So there's huge matches going on to qualify. And so it's interesting to hear his perspective on those things, and especially, and also being a black man traveling in Africa. So there's just a different layer to travel when you're black and you're in the motherland. And I have not experienced that for myself. And so I really want to talk to him more about that. Hopefully I'll have him on the show to talk about his experiences there. Yeah, also it's Black History Month. So shout out to Carter G. Woodson, my one of my favorite writers and just folks that kind of just wrote on the black experience. The Miseducation of the Negro was one of the most influential pieces that I read when I was in college. So I should probably read that again just for old time's sake. And also I want to always, acknowledge Bob Marley's birthday was on the 6th of the month. And I don't know, that's just kind of become a holiday, a tradition that we do here. We always just, get some food, some Jamaican food and listen to his music and get some cupcakes or something like that to celebrate him. And I don't know, I just want my son and others to just recognize his greatness and what he represented for us as a people and music in general. So Valentine's Day also just passed. And so the question was posed to me, what's the equivalent of flowers for men? And my answer was, there is no such thing, because patriarchy and everything else. I don't know. I just feel like Valentine's Day and the way it's carried out culturally is just a very surface level byproduct, symptom of our patriarchal society, our heteronormative, monogamous normative, relational culture, and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know, the idea of flowers and whatever, just the whole thing is just, I don't know. That was just my first answer. But then it was like, the person I was talking to about this was like, but most women don't even like flowers. And I was like, well, damn, I assumed that most women probably, my assumption was that most women accept, like flowers. But that may, even if that were to be true, that could just be a cultivated cultural thing. But when in reality, honestly and truly, women may not actually like flowers if sans all this conditioning and whatnot. So that was an interesting conversation. Ultimately, though, if you want somebody that you love to feel appreciated, know your personnel and do something that they appreciate. Do something or get something that they appreciate. Like, flowers is nice for those who like flowers. If somebody else likes something else, get them that. And so for men, women, doesn't matter. Non-binary, doesn't matter who you are. If you want to show somebody you care, show them you know who they are. Show them you know what they appreciate. So first I'm going to talk about the MLB lockout because I haven't talked about that yet. And it's frustrating to me. This episode's primarily going to be about race, but the MLB lockout is about capitalism. And it's just really annoying to me that the owners are locking out the league. And from what I can tell, the season's not going to start anytime soon. And that's, as I've mentioned before, that's bittersweet for me. I have a hate relationship with the league itself. I love baseball though, right? So I want to see the sport played. I just enjoy the competition. I enjoy the game, right? So I want to see baseball come back and be here so that I can enjoy that. But yeah, the league is just a mess, and the beef that they have with the players. There's the players, from what I can understand and what I'm reading, they have some legit gripes. They want to make sure their teams stay competitive. They want to make sure minor leaguers and first-year players are getting paid adequately. One of the disputes I just saw recently was that the major leagues, the owners don't want to pay minor leaguers for spring training time, which, I mean, they're saying, oh, it's just training. You're there for exposure, which I get that. But it's also like, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. These kids are making no money in the minor leagues. And I don't know. It's just like, it's 4 weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. Like, just pay these kids. Like, it's not that serious. Like, I don't know. It's stuff like this just really irritates me. So hopefully they get that situated. I really do hope the players get a lot of what they're looking for, and we can get back to baseball. Another thing I want to talk about briefly is that this was the last year of eligibility for the Hall of Fame for Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens as well. I don't care as much about Roger Clemens. I care more about Barry Bonds. Needless to say, Bonds did not get elected into the Hall of Fame. I will forever say that Barry Bonds is one of the best players that ever played the game of baseball. He should be in the Hall of Fame. He should get all the accolades. He should be, he should be a model of what greatness in the game is. I know there's allegations of steroids. I know there's allegations of PEDs and stuff in his career. That being said, he's still amazing. Nobody will ever do the numbers he did. Like, I think he was like 60 or 70 hits shy of 3,000 hits, but he had 1,000 more walks than Willie Mays, which is insane. Like, I don't know. And he hit over 700 home runs. He also is in the 500 club in terms of over 500 stolen bases, obviously over 500 home runs. Nobody's ever going to do that ever again. I don't even know if there'll be a 300 player again. So, like, Barry Bonds just hands down is one of the best players that ever played the game. With the whole PED situation, that was just a messy, muddy time in the league's history. I get it. That sucks. And we wish, baseball people are pure with numbers and all this kind of stuff. But honestly, I'm going to call this out because we're not pure about numbers. Because if we were pure about numbers, no records prior to like 1950 would count, because guess who wasn't playing? Black people. So, would Babe Ruth be as great going up against Satchel Paige and his contemporaries? Probably not. Would the pitchers, major league white pitchers, would they be as great without facing Josh Gibson? No. So, like, I don't know. Like, there should be a huge, my mom's been saying this for a minute. We've talked about this for a long time. There should be an asterisk on anybody in the Hall of Fame who didn't play against black people, black and Latino people. Like, I mean, come on. Like, you aren't even playing against, like, look at the league right now, see who the best players are. Yeah, they're not all white. I would say most of the best players in the league aren't white. So if that's the talent pool of baseball in this world, in this country, yeah, I guarantee you there's people in the Hall of Fame from prior to 1950 that don't deserve to be there, because they wouldn't be there if the competition was actually fair. So considering that eras change, norms change in the game, Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, nobody's going to ever touch his numbers again. He needs to be there. And I think the reason he's not in there is I think it's a racial thing. I mean, Clemens isn't in there too. And his case is even, more. He's also an amazing player, but his PED and steroid issue is different than Barry Bonds's. And I'm not going to get into all the details. But I just think that what to me is the most annoying is that I have to see and listen to A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, all the damn time. He's a commentator on ESPN. He's on shows and blah, blah, blah. This guy was fined and suspended multiple times for PED use. But he's the guy who they decide to have as a commentator. Like, come on, you could have chosen anyone. Curtis Granderson. There's a whole bunch of people who could be great at doing what A-Rod is doing right now. And so the fact that they take a proven and known PED user and have him be that prominently displayed as a commentator and curator of our understanding of the game to this day, it just smacks of inconsistency and just I just hate it. So I'm gonna get off that soapbox because I'm gonna get to other things. But MLB again is just constantly frustrating me. But also at the same time, I just want baseball. Like I'm sad. The weather's gonna start to get warmer. I'm gonna be sad when baseball's not coming. But anyway, so the other big news that took place was that Brian Flores, who was the coach of the Miami Dolphins in the NFL, he is suing the NFL for discriminatory hiring practices. And he also is alleging that owners were trying to pay him to lose games to get draft picks and the whole tanking culture and all that kind of stuff. If you're losing, keep losing to get your draft pick or whatever it is. So, shout out to Brian Flores. Obviously, he put his own career future on the line to do this, which is admirable. I mean, it's a Kaepernick type move, although I don't think Kaepernick knew that him kneeling was going to be career suicide in the league the way it wound up being. But anyway, I mean, taking a stand against the NFL if you're a black person is just not a safe thing to do. And so anyway, Brian Flores, hats off to him. I commend him for doing what he did. And I want to just, acknowledge that at the time that he put out that lawsuit, there were no black coaches in the NFL other than Mike Tomlin. And I know a couple have been hired since then, including Mike McDaniel. We'll talk about him in a second. But, the fact – so anyway, so for those who may not be familiar with the Brian Flores situation specifically, he got a text from Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots, congratulating him on the Giants job. Brian Flores was in the middle of preparing for an interview for the Giants head coaching job. So that text was confusing. He's like, how did I get a job I didn't interview for yet? And then things kind of connected, and it became apparent that another Brian, I can't remember this guy's name, but a white Brian basically got the job, and Bill Belichick texted the wrong Brian, congratulations. But what it exposed is that Brian Flores, a black man, his interview was really just to satisfy the Rooney Rule, which, for those who aren't familiar, is a rule that basically requires a minority candidate be interviewed for every open head coaching position. And so, I mean, obviously that could just be it's a sham, basically, in actuality. I mean, it's just not, it doesn't really enforce any kind of equity or any kind of anything. Mike Tomlin I think he may have been one of the first Rooney Rule type. Actually, I think he was the first one because Art Rooney, the owner of the Steelers, the Rooney Rule is named after him, and Mike Tomlin is going to be a Hall of Fame coach. He's just been a beast his entire time in Pittsburgh, which is great. But what the Rooney Rule hasn't done with any efficacy is actually keep black coaches in the league. And there was a brief article that my mom actually read to me. It was like a little synopsis. I think the New York Times did it, and I'm gonna see if I can plug it in. But basically, it was saying that how black coaches never get second or third chances, or seldom get second or third chances to head coach in the NFL. The only guy that was close was Denny Green, who was the head coach of the Vikings and Cardinals, and he also was the interim head coach after a coach got fired mid-season. So he's the only black coach to come close to three head coaching jobs in the NFL. Most black coaches don't even see two. And what that article also talked about was how guys, black coaches in the NFL who haven't gotten a second or third job have better winning records, have winning records or better records than white coaches who, like, I mean, Fox, what was his first name? John Fox, I think. There's coaches that they named in that article whose names I knew because they've been around the league so long. These are white guys with career losing records who have had 3 NFL head coaching jobs. So it just goes to the whole idea that you could be twice as good or better and get half as much. I hate that's a thing, but it's absolutely a thing. Like, I remember being early in my career and I heard people saying that, and I was like, come on, man. That like I feel like the way we say it as an expectation is problematic. But saying it as a cautionary word of warning and hey, like heads up, like this is out there, I think it just hits different. Anyway, it hit me the wrong way when I was young in my career, but ultimately I realized it's true. It happened to me personally, and so anyway. So yeah, all that basically is a huge flying, not a fly in the face. The NFL is just a freaking racist organization. It's just a racist organization, and we know that. I mean, all the owners are white, which is the same thing in most of the other sports leagues. It's just, all right, I'm gonna cut to the Super Bowl. So I went years without even watching the Super Bowl because after Kaepernick, I was just like, cancel the NFL. I think I alluded to this in other episodes, but yeah, I canceled. I didn't watch anything. I didn't, especially not the Super Bowl, whatever. Definitely found something else to do that Sunday. This year, for whatever reason, I started tapping in a little bit more, and I don't know. I like the sport again with Major League Baseball. I like baseball, so I like observing the highest stage that sport is played on, and the NFL is that for football. And so, yeah, I did watch the Super Bowl this year, and I don't know. It was a fun game. I definitely was rooting for the Bengals because I just like underdogs, and like the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl. Okay. I don't know. That's just crazy. So what struck me was the halftime show. Like, the kid was up and he saw the halftime show, and we were rocking to the songs that were being played. Had 50 Cent, Mary J. It was a show. It was good. Kendrick on there. You know what I'm saying? It was a good show, and it was just culturally a good show. It was the fact that you could see the cityscape from the aerial view, like they made it look like L.A., Compton, whatever. Like, it was just dope, and it was well done, choreographed. All that stuff was just fire. The music was great, and I enjoyed it. Being a black man, even though I'm on the East Coast, like I enjoy it, right? Of course, like it was an enjoyable halftime show. But yet again, just like with football itself, like the enjoyment is dampened for me because I know most of the people in our audience like don't even get it. Like, I know for a fact the vast majority of people in our audience are white, both physically at the game, first and foremost. And so I just hate that the NFL, actively racist as it is, extracting black labor the way it does, then puts on this show essentially commemorating LA hip hop from like, the early 2000s era-ish. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It goes back to Snoop too. So that was like in the 90s, late 80s, 90s. So, I mean, it was just kind of an ode to like LA hip hop. And then Mary J. Blige too. Like, I don't know, like for my boy to see it and to like see that display of our dance and our music and our performance and all those amazing things, which are dope. Like we killed that joint. Like we are amazing in terms of those performances and all that. I just hate the idea of the white gaze on it, Gaze, and it just feels extracting. It's extracted, it's exploited, and it's just in poor taste, honestly. Like, I just hate it. Like, and so, yeah, so I saw a post by Steven Satterfield, who he hosted the High on the Hog series on Netflix, which was super dope. But yeah, he posted a pretty long post about the halftime show and the NFL being racist and all that kind of stuff. And I definitely agree with what he said. And I happened to just scroll through some of the comments, and it's just the Unapologetic 35 said, a word, representation is not liberation, which just 100%, like that just is what needs to be said. And on representation. So this year we saw the Maya Angelou quarter. Beautiful quarter. A Tubman 20 would be dope. But it doesn't mean as much. I'm not going to say it means nothing, but it doesn't mean nearly as much without substance behind it. And by substance, I mean 1.8 million Angelous or 22,500 Tubman 20s for every descendant of enslaved Africans. And by that, I mean reparations. Reparations is liberation, okay? Like actually getting paid and compensated for the work that we did for free for generations. That is at least part of liberation. Anyway, I digress. I'm not going to get on that soapbox much more. But the other piece I wanted to talk about, and I want to shout out BC for putting me onto this For Color Nerds podcast episode about being authentic at work and how that's basically a lie. They had Jodi-Ann Burey on there talking about how being your full self at work is a trap, basically. And she had a TED talk about it. They had a clip from there. And honestly, there was actually, we talked about this a little bit on a racism episode back in the summer. But I just feel like this is just a very true statement. And I think that one of the best parts that came out of that episode for me was the idea that we need to interrogate what is meant by the word professional, executive presence, those types of things. Because a lot of times what we mean by that is we mean a white male cishet norm that has to that is the bar. And again, this gets into like NFL coaches. It literally gets into everything. Like, what is acceptable leadership, what's acceptable, whatever. And that poses challenges for even white women. It poses challenges for black people. It poses challenges for LGBTQIA folks. It just like, so again, we need to interrogate those ideas and have that inform what it is we're really talking about. I know, so somebody at work mentioned Black History Month at the beginning of the month, and I work with all white people, and I couldn't help myself. Like I was like, does everybody know the history of Black History Month, how it came to be, or whatever? It's not, and I mentioned, does everybody know why it's in February, whatever? And I explained the whole history, Carter G. Woodson, Negro History Week, whatever, and all that. And I don't know. Nobody's going to say like, oh, I shouldn't have done that at work. I mean, it would be uncouth to do that in this day and age, at least in any kind of somewhat fairly liberal work environment. But I still felt uncomfortable doing it. And I've worked in places where I might have been frowned upon for bringing something like that up. That's just a literally yesterday example of bringing your authentic self to work and it feeling like a trap. Because even though I think it was safe to do, I still felt uncomfortable in the moment, and I still hesitated as to whether or not I should even go there. The main point of that was that being your full self at work, being a black person, being a woman, being LGBTQIA, whatever. But this episode was specifically about blackness. Like being your full black self at work isn't really safe, because while organizations, especially predominantly white organizations, offer the correct lip service and poster boards and mottos and all that kind of stuff, and might even have employee resource groups or whatever, there really isn't enough structural, resourced, and cultural support for authentic blackness in workspaces. Most of the time, I just don't think that's the case. And what I mean by that is when and they talked about this in the episode, when you push back, like, is that pushback actually received? Or is that something that will be on your performance review because you're loud or you're angry or you're argumentative? You can't be a team player and get along with the direction that, has been set forth in the organization, right? These are the challenges that sometimes we know clearly that we've been chastised for something we said, but we still may not know if race was the reason or something else or whatever. And that's the frustrating part about all this, because companies get to look great and even have like diverse numbers. They even get to like purport their numbers or whatever. But does it actually feel inclusive when you're actually there? Does the one black person on the board or the C-suite, do they actually feel like they can truly represent and be themselves and bring their true value, all the layers, intersectional layers of their diversity at the table, and truly add that value? I mean, I may have talked about him before. Stuart Scott was him and Dan Patrick were the hosts of SportsCenter when ESPN was a fledgling news organization back in the late 80s, 90s. And he and his flair, his blackness brought SportsCenter to be what it is. Like, he got them out of the stodgy suit wearing, boring news reporting, and added the swagger, added like culture and life to that. And he made it like fun to watch. My brother and I would watch Stuart Scott over and over again. Back then, they didn't have like new programs every hour. They had SportsCenter, a 1 hour SportsCenter program. It would run on the hour, every hour. They would repeat the same episode over and over again for like the morning, because like that's just what they did. And my brother and I would sit and watch on a Saturday morning. We'd watch the same thing 2 or 3 times just because it was that entertaining to watch. You knew what happened, but like just hearing Stuart Scott and Dan Patrick do what they did, primarily Stuart Scott, like That's it. I guess this is where I'm going with it. Black people are great. We're great. We're great. The NFL is great because of black people, right? ESPN is great because of Stuart Scott and black people, right? I mean, the Super Bowl was won because of black people. I know Cooper Kupp won the MVP, and that was kind of lame. I mean, he deserved it. I'm not gonna say that. He deserved it. But Aaron Donald, like, for real, from a momentum shifting standpoint, Cooper Kupp caught the passes that sealed the deal. But Aaron Donald was the one who single-handedly and the defense in total changed the momentum and changed the tide of that game. Oh, which by the way was led by Raheem Morris, a black defensive coordinator, one-time NFL coach. I surely hope he gets a head coaching job, because it was him and his adjustments that got 7 sacks on Burrow, whatever. Okay, black people are killing it, right? Halftime show, we're killing it. Our music, killing it. Like, this is what we do. But so I think that's just the moral of the story for me. It's just like, until it's truly safe for us to be us and to represent and add our true value in organizations and cultures, it's gonna be whack, and everybody's gonna suffer, because our greatness is being quelched and not being elevated to where it should be and not being celebrated. And what's even worse, we're not allowed to own it. It becomes extracted, extorted. We need to own it. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up the show there, but before I do, I'm gonna talk about the song I'm rocking to right now. Everybody, anybody but a kid, anybody with any proximity to children has seen the movie, or at least heard of the movie Encanto. And I'm here to say, enough about Bruno. The song for me is El Camino de Mirabel, which is from the score. And I just want to give a shout out to Germaine Franco, who wrote the score to that film. And she did an amazing job. And it's just crazy to me. I looked her up, since. It's amazing to me that she is the first woman to score a Disney film, 2022. And she's the first Latina to join the music branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and the first to receive an Oscar nomination for Best Original Score. So, again, firsts that seem like they're way, 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 way overdue. But I wanted to give a shout out to her, because she did a fire job with that score, and that song is amazing. Like, the movements in there, it's only like a 2-minute, 30-second song. It's just dynamic and beautiful. Beautiful piece of work. And yeah, I mean, the score, all the songs, Bruno, all those others. Actually, my favorite song is probably the Pressure song that the sister Luisa sings, but in terms of the lyrical songs. But that piece from the score, hands down, my favorite of the entire project. So shout out to her for that. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening to Who Knows It's Just Life, the podcast. I always appreciate you making me a part of your day. As always, you can get at me on Instagram at Realdadult. That's REALDADULT. On there, you can let me know how you felt about this episode, prior episodes, or any ideas for future episodes. And yeah, I'll be coming back with some new episodes soon. I got some guests lined up. I'm excited to drop those. And but until then, be safe, be well, peace.